Hey, welcome back. So, while you're marketing your coaching program, you probably get sick of chasing people, sending the DMs, going to the networking events, following up. It can take hours and hours. And then, how much many clients do you actually get in return for all that effort? Wouldn't it be easier if you just put your message out there and then people came to you ready to buy? To help you do that, I've got a special guest, Chris Hanlon, who's going to be teaching you about how to use your speaking and your message to get clients to come to you so you spend less time chasing them and more time transforming lives. Now, Chris has been working for over a decade as the strategic force behind more than 100 successful TEDx talks. And as a communication strategist and the creator of the Captivation Architecture Framework, he helps passionate experts transform complex ideas into compelling, nonlinear narratives that capture the imagination. So instead of leaving your audience confused and demotivated, you have them on fire to work with you. So his unique approach to this is rooted in his diverse background. Sorry, I'm tripping there. But having run a martial arts dojo for 5 years, he's learned that there's no single way to coach, which as a coaching program design specialist, I very much agree with. There are so many ways to do it, and what works for one person it may not work for another. So this adaptability, combined with his background as an instructional designer and facilitator, has taught the power of cohort-based learning and focusing on primary constraints. So I'm going to be asking him questions to help him clarify what all that means and how you can apply it to your business. So thank you very much for joining us, Chris.
Hey, it's great to be here, Stephanie.
So when people are asked about some of their greatest fears in life, sometimes public speaking is like right up there with fear of death. So how do you help people get past that, get past their stage fright, and have the confidence to appear compelling on stage and to not forget all their lines?
Okay, so this is one of my soapbox topics, honestly, is that people go on, oh yeah, I need to get my confidence up before I can put together a talk. You're getting it backwards. Confidence comes from competence. You'll feel confident about your talk when you put it together and you know what it is you're talking about. I see too many people go, I want to build up my confidence with, I don't know, breathing exercises and mantras and all this sort of thing before I even think about putting together a talk. And it just doesn't work that way. You need to put together a talk in order to become confident enough to give it. So it really depends on how well you know what it is you're saying. And that's not learning lines. That's how well do you know your topic? How well do you know if it's rooted in your expertise, you shouldn't have much problem with this at all, right? You know what you know. It's just working out the best way to say it. And once you are comfortable with that, and that's what I help people do, then the confidence isn't an issue. One of the bigger problems that people have when they jump on stage is they start thinking about themselves. They start thinking about, oh, I wonder what they think about me. I wonder what they think about what I just said. And this happens more when people wing it than when they're prepared, just so you know. And if you do find yourself falling into that spiral, if you find yourself asking in your mind, what are they thinking about me? Pick someone in the audience and look at them and put your message across and look at them to see you whether they're getting it, because you can see them light up when they get it, right? And so as soon as you start focusing on your message and the audience, the confidence isn't a problem anymore, because you're not thinking about yourself. You think about the message and the audience, and once you focus on that, confidence isn't an issue. So people say they're fearful of speaking, but they're fearful of speaking about something they don't know anything about.
That's a very good point. One of the best things I did for my own confidence as a news coach was kind of outline, here's what all I know, here's what all I know about it. Yeah, that for me was more powerful than any affirmation. Just having it there in black and white, the facts about what I know and what I have to offer, made me realize I did know more than I thought and had more to offer than I thought.
Yeah,
That's
and
so
and
valuable.
if a question comes up that's outside of your expertise, feel free to say, actually, I don't have an answer to that. That's not what I deal with, or that's a really good question I haven't considered before. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you. Don't feel like you have to make something up and tell them. just be honest and say, you know, that's a really good question. And when you find out the answer, let me know too, because I've said that before. So, you know, just be honest.
What I usually do in those situations, I usually say, I don't know the answer to that, but I probably know someone who does. Let me check in my network and see who might be able to answer that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So you want to
So
be
that,
helpful, but don't make things up to be helpful. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's like that talk I've seen about the AI overview. No information is better than wrong information.
Yes.
Speaking of no information or wrong information, when you were talking about, looking at a member of the audience, that old piece of advice came to mind, picture the audience in their underwear. Does that actually work?
No, don't do that. Though it's either very distracting in a good way or very distracting in a bad way. It depends what your audience looks like. Um, you don't want to go there. No, I don't. Yeah, the only thing you need to do is be very clear or confident in your structure of what you're talking about. So I have a very specific process that I take our TEDx speakers through. But before we get into that, I guess I should say that the style of talk that I recommend or that I work with most is something different from what most people do. So you have coaches listening to this and they know their thing. And the biggest mistake I see them make is they jump on stage and they start teaching. Now, the problem with that is when you teach, it's very linear because that's the best way to teach. That's how we learn. That's how we teach is this, then this, then this, then this, then this. It's linear because of
Guilty.
building up knowledge, right? But the problem with that is if people already know or think they know what you're saying, they tune out because they go, oh, I know
Mm,
where this is going. Even if you've got a big surprise set up here, they don't know that surprise there. So they're already thinking about what's for dinner tonight. Like you've lost them. So the idea with a TEDx style talk, so TEDx is a great idea for a lot of people, but it's not the best idea for all coaches or all businesses, right? But the style you can use for anything, I think. And the biggest difference is that it opens a loop rather than closes a loop. So there's basically three types of talks that we're all two types that we're most comfortable with or know about. It's the educational style, which we just talked about, or the sales style. And both of those close a loop. Educational, you teach them something. Success means they've learned it. End of story. Done. The sales talk, you're talking about the transformation you're giving them, the benefits, whatever. The end of that is they either buy it or they don't buy it. So success is they bought it and you're done. A captivation style talk or the TEDx style talk is where we don't tell them everything about everything. We capture their imagination. I talk about a TEDx talk being an on-ramp to my obsession. It's to get the audience to go, I'm excited about this. You should be too. And they can jump on board if they are, right? And it doesn't close the door, it leaves the door open. And that's what gets them to follow you, chase you, and take action. So that I came to that epiphany because we would get some professor, for example's sake, who's done this, whatever their topic is, for 20 years. They know well, not everything, but you know what I mean. They know so much. And we're like, we're going to put you on the biggest stage of your life. We're putting you on TEDx, and it's going to be on the TED platform with 10 million views a month or whatever it is, and biggest stage of your life. You can talk about your topic that you're so passionate about, and you've got a whole 15 minutes to do it. And they just freak out. They're like, I can't even introduce my topic in 15 minutes. What am I going to do in 15 minutes? What can I say in 15 minutes? Because they're used to giving hour-long lectures and 20 of those lectures to even give the introductory course. So the whole point is we go very narrow and we go very deep. That's what will get people. The most common mistake is everyone goes, well, I've got to cover this and this and this and this and this, and they go very broad and very shallow, and it's not very satisfying for the audience, because when you go shallow, it's like, well, I could have figured that out myself just thinking about it, you know. But when you get one portion and you go really deep, you can say there's all this other stuff we can't cover because we've only got 15 minutes or whatever it is. We're going to go on this, and you go very deep, and they see the world in a different way, and it opens something up to them. And that's the captivation style that I work with, and that's what I help with our TEDx speakers.
Yeah, and as an audience member, I really prefer that style. Like, the overview style is an option to some extent, but yeah, I definitely prefer attending the deeper style ones where where I can get a quick win in one area, where I can get a new understanding in one area. If they just give the overview, it's like you said, I could have figured that out, or chances are I already know it. So it's like, okay, you want me to buy your coaching program based on you saying what I already know. Well, why should I? Whereas if they can give me a new revelation or a new way of doing things or a quick win in the training, and then say I can get you more of those wins in these other areas that you also need, then I'm a lot more interested. It's rampant throughout the coaching world. Too many people, they tell you what to do, but not enough depth on how to do it. So you end up, not getting the results. Whereas if they can go into enough depth that you can see they actually know how to tell me how to do it, that's a game changer.
Yeah. And you want to give, so Frank Kern calls it results in advance. You want to say, here's a result. I'll give you a result straight away. That's the ideal. If you could give them some sort of result today, that then they're like, oh yeah, that's great. I want more. That's the point. I want more. And this whole thing is about wanting more. So there's quite a bit of structure to what I do in terms of structuring a talk. And one of the main things is trusting your audience to work things out. So you don't spoon feed them everything. You give them some hints, and you drop little breadcrumbs, as it were, so that they pick them up and they put the thing together. The best way to explain this is, I don't know if you've been into films and stuff, but Quentin Tarantino does some great films, right? And his films are quite different in terms of, often it'll start with the last scene, like it's starting with the end of the movie,
Mm.
and there's all this big battle going on, and people are doing crazy stuff, and you're just sitting there going, who are these people? What are they doing? Why are they there? How did they get there? What the hell is going on? And then it will jump to a scene 3 years earlier, and there'll be two of those people in that scene, and you'll start seeing, oh, how this thing whole came together. And then it'll jump to another couple, and you start working it all out. And then towards the end of the movie, it gets back to that original scene. You go, oh, now I know who these people are, what they're trying to do, how they got here, all this sort of thing. And all this is what I call the puzzle theory of structure. People are putting it together in their heads. It's keeping them engaged, because I believe people are puzzle solving organisms. That's what we do. We solve puzzles. That's what we love. And then Tarantino at the end will usually, there's a twist, and he'll drop in a piece of information. You'll be like, oh my God, the whole time that person thought that was happening, but it was actually this happening. So that's why everybody does it. And you get this huge dopamine hit, because in your brain goes, I solved the puzzle. Now, the director pretty much spoon fed you all that, but you did put it together. And if you can do this in a talk, it's incredibly effective. Now, would you do this every time you were going to give a presentation? No, that would be overboard. But there's certainly some things that you can do in that vein that will help people. And all you need to do is trust your audience a little bit, give them some of the breadcrumbs, and let them come to that conclusion. Now, you'll probably cover it as well afterwards, but they'll go, oh, I already, because you've done that. You've watched a movie or read a mystery book, and you go, I know the butler did it. And then at the end, when it's like, the butler did it, you're like, I knew that. You take that win. Well, do that with the people you're giving a talk to. Give them the clues, get them to come to the conclusion, then make sure that they did get the right answer. For those that didn't get it, you spell it out. And those that did get it, they're like, yeah, I knew that. I got that.
So could you give me an example of how that might work in a business context?
Yeah. So if if you were a coach that was coaching people on, um, what's a good thing to coach people on? Advertising on, how to do Facebook ads or something like that. You could present two or three, you could give them a couple of principles, and then you could present two or three case studies, and you could say, one of these did really well, one of them didn't do so well, and one of them knocked it out of the park. Going by those principles, which one do you think would do which? Or something along those lines, so that they put together what you've already given them to what you're presenting them now. You're testing their knowledge, and you're giving them the chance to have their own epiphany. Because it's much better than if you just say, here's a principle, and here's that talk, and it shows the principle. But if you showed three principles and then you showed three talks and you went, which principle applies to which talk, it's causing the audience to do some of the work, which ingrains it better. They get more out of it, and they'll feel good if they get it right. And they'll learn something if they get it wrong,
That's
basically, as well.
brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, sorry.
so do you tend to use a lot of slides with this, or just do the talking head, or kind of a combination?
Yeah. So I tend to avoid slides as much as possible. So when I'm doing TEDx talks with people, I would recommend they don't use slides. Slides have to justify their existence. Put it that way. That's a much better way to put it. One of the reasons is you want to be branding yourself. So even if you are using slides, I have some very specific rules around using them. You want to turn the slides off frequently so that people are looking at you. And one of the bigger things is if you're getting to that big impact statement, that big crux of everything you've been talking to, you click the thing and it will go to a black screen. The screen will just go black. Because what happens is everybody is looking at the screen. And you click it and it goes black and they all look at you. And then you pause a second and you deliver the line. They're going to remember you and that line rather than remembering some text and that line. It's really important to do that. So with slides, like I said, they have to justify themselves. So the best use of slides is to help with the emotion. And images carry emotion much better than words will. Okay. And sometimes, so an image up there will really carry an emotion. The other really good use of slides is when you've got a very abstract thing. So we have a lot of professors and stuff like that, and they've got quite abstract things they've got to get across. And a diagram or that sort of thing is the best way to do it. Like, it's really hard to put it into words and get people on the same page, whereas a diagram can really put that across. So yeah, Guy Howard Willis talked about the Manta 5 aquabike. So we had to have a couple of videos, and one video was two people riding across the lake, which was cool. So it gave you the sense of, oh, really, they are riding along the lake. And another thing was, he said we had one of the problems, engineering problems, was it sort of floats in the water. So like the handlebars were above the water, everything else is below the water, sort of bobbing under there. And you get into it and you have to pedal 3 or 4 strokes to get it out of the water to go along the surface. And that, if you're listening to me now, it sort of makes sense, but it doesn't, I think I can imagine that. But when you show the video of the guy doing it, you're like, oh yeah, I see what you mean. And so they had to get that. We had to get it down from 15 strokes to like 3 or 4 or whatever it was. I forget the number. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. So there are certain things that you want to have slides, or in this case, a video or whatever, but it's got to earn its place in the talk. A slide should not be your thing to read off to keep you up to what you're saying. Like, it should not be there for you. It's there for the audience.
I've been
So we
guilty.
don't. Yeah, our TEDx speakers don't have notes, they don't have cards, they don't have the PowerPoint thing with the script on it or anything like that. They memorize their talk. And in fact, one of the things I get them to do is if they are using slides, when they're rehearsing, to say click, click, click. So they know when they're going to click. They don't forget to click. And it's in their rehearsal to say click. Nobody so far has said click out loud on stage. If they do, it'll be hilarious and we'll make fun of them, but nobody will forget it. It'll be great. So, don't worry about that. But it is important that it becomes a performance. So when we go through this program, there's four main parts. There's the clarity, which is we want to be clear. What are you talking about? Why are you talking about it? Where's this leading to? What does the audience know beforehand? What do they know afterwards? Like, what are you giving them? All that sort of thing. The clarity's important. It's the foundation. And on top of that foundation, then we've got the structure. How are we going to talk about it? What's the logical journey that we're taking the audience through? There's a logical journey that takes them from what they know now to what you want them to know. There's a bunch of things in between that you've got to overcome. It might be a lack of knowledge. It might be a common misconception. It might be, a change in technology is a big one these days. Like, can we do that now? Yeah, we can. So there might be those sorts of things, right? So we get the logical journey. Then in the structure, we also work on the emotional journey. Every emotion is activated by contrast. So if I was to give a rah-rah talk and I was rah-rah the whole time, I'd be flat. There's no emotion there. There's no contrast, which is why if you hear someone who's a really good motivational speaker, like, I don't know, Tony Robbins or something, he'll talk about, living in a 10-foot square apartment, no better than a jail cell, washing his dishes in the bath because there's no sink, and then living in a castle. And it's that difference of contrast that creates the emotion. So we do emotional thing. So that's structure. Once we've got our structure laid out, then we go into flow. Now, flow is where we ball up the structure, throw it away, and everything's oral and oral. And this freaks people out. They go, oh, I can't memorize things. And that's because you've been memorizing things wrong. Most people read the words and then they close their eyes and they read the words on the screen of their mind. And that's how they're memorizing. That is the worst way to memorize. We want to think of things like the way you know your favorite song. You only hear 2 or 3 bars of the music and you know the next words. They come out before you even think about it. And you know the song because of the rhythm, because of the pitch, because of the tone, the energy level for that piece. This is a slow bit, this is a fast bit, whatever. And that's how you learn your talk. And remember, you're not memorizing somebody else's words. It's not like Shakespeare or, you're not learning Hamlet here. These are your words. These are your stories. So you know them. In flow, what we're doing in this section called flow, what we're doing is finding the best words to use, the words that work for you. The words that work for you might not be the words that work for me, but they work for you, but also they're accessible to the audience. So not the jargon that you know and nobody else knows, but the stuff that, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And everybody can follow along, or more specifically, your audience can follow along. And then once we've gone through flow, then we do performance. Once you've got that flow right, you've got your structure. And again, you've got clarity, then you've got structure on top of the clarity, you've got flow on top of the structure. And the last piece is performance. How do you gesture? How do you use the stage? How do you use your voice? When do you pick it up and go a bit faster and get people excited? And when do you slow down and get them to really deeply think about that point that you're making? So that's all in the performance aspect of it. And so we do those in that specific order, and that order really does matter. You've got to get that right. That's me getting on my soapbox about the methodology that I put together.
But yeah, it totally makes sense to have all those pieces in place. And I remember when I first started working with coaches, the curse of the expert was so obvious. Like they knew all this stuff, they knew all this jargon. They forgot that their audience didn't know this. So they'd be saying stuff like, I'm going to help you shift your paradigms. while totally forgetting that the audience might not even realize they have paradigms or that those paradigms are affecting their life enough to be worth paying to deal with.
Yeah, and it's not always just jargon, although that's a big one. Um, there's cultural things too, and because like I'm in New Zealand, you're in Canada right now, right? Um, we're talking across the world, and I've talked across the world every day now. You know, pretty much every day I'm talking to somebody in a different country through Zoom, which is great. But that doesn't fix the cultural issue. So we had a TEDx talk a few years ago. Linda was talking about, it was like an HR talk, she was talking about HR, something to do with HR. And one of the things that she said was, after Pike River, everything changed. Now, everybody in the room, this was in rehearsal, knew exactly what she meant. And I knew that if, when she gave that talk on the stage at TEDx Ruakura that year, everybody in the room would have known what she meant. But I also knew when it goes on the video and it goes global, nobody would have a clue what she meant. So, um, but it was very simple. This is what I call a speed bump. And a speed bump is when you're talking about whatever you're talking about and you say something the audience doesn't quite capture. And it's like a car driving along a road, hitting a bump and leaving the road for a bit. Everybody's like, what's Pike River? And they're thinking about what could that be, working it out. And if they give up and then they catch up, but they've missed a whole bit of what you've talked. It's not like they're pressing pause, you know, that they've missed a bit. And then one or two of those might not be too bad, but if you have enough of them through the talk, you've totally lost them. They're disoriented, right? So I
Yeah,
call it
I
a speed
find
bump.
Yeah, I find it as a part of the audience, it increases my cognitive load when I've got to have like this list of terms that I'm waiting for the definition of and wondering, will I get the definition of this or not? So the list of terms or the question of whether they'll be defined and of whether I'll be able to understand the rest without them, that takes up cognitive space and takes away from my ability to absorb the
Yeah,
rest of the
you're
talk.
making the audience do the work, and you don't want to be doing that. So, or at least you want to give them the right work to do, not that work. So in this case, Pike River, it was a simple change. It was like after the Pike River mining disaster, everything changed. That's all she had to say. We all know it's the biggest mining disaster in New Zealand. It was a few years back. We all knew what it meant, but anyone outside of New Zealand probably would never have heard of it. Now, it doesn't, there's no point in going into detail and explaining it, but giving that little bit of context, a couple of words, the Pike River mining disaster, everything changed. People go, oh, yeah, it's a mining disaster. Never heard of it, but I know what they're talking about now. So that's an example of, yeah, making sure that what you're saying is accessible to the audience that you're talking to. Yeah.
And I think that's a good example of curiosity versus confusion. If they don't know what you're talking about, they'll tune out. If they know what you're talking about, but it hints at something more, then they're more hooked.
Yeah, and some of those people that watch that might go, wonder what that Pike River mining disaster was about, and just do a Google search and find, what happened. And others, it's not relevant for them to know, so they're like, I don't care, but I know the context of what she's talking about. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we're close to running out of time, so I want to wrap it up here.
Oof.
So, but if somebody wants to get better at speaking, to get more clients from their speaking, and to spend less time chasing clients and more time working with them, what are their next steps with you?
So I have a free community. It's called the Compelling Communicators Community. I had to name it something like a tongue twister just for things like this. But yeah, the Compelling Communicators Community on School. It's free, as I said, and a lot of the resources that I use with my TEDx speakers. So I still coach, at the moment I coach TEDx University of Waikato every year. All the resources are in that school thing, and they're there for free. So you can go in and learn a lot of more about these concepts I've just mentioned here. I go into a bit more detail about those there. Plus, it's a community where you can ask some questions, get some more information. And I do, one-on-one coaching and group coaching with people as well from time to time. So you'll find out about that in that group as well. But there are resources, and I have you in there as well in my expert resources classroom. So I interview a whole bunch of people that do different things that I think would be useful for our members. So we've got that in there as well.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. And for everybody watching this, that's going to be in the show notes. So whether you're watching this on my podcast, on my blog, on YouTube, wherever it is, it'll just be in the description or the show notes that go with it. So it'll be really easy for you to find. So thanks again for being here, Chris. I really appreciate all the valuable, specific, actionable tips you shared today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, and thank you everyone for tuning in. I encourage you to check out his school if you want to learn more about how to be a really compelling speaker who gets clients through speaking. And I hope all of you have an amazing day.